Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 87 of the Level Flight podcast. We've got a full crew here today. My name is Connor, joined by Brian and Elliott. Fellas, how are we doing?
I'm going to address it early, but I got a green screen. If you're watching the YouTube version, believe it or not, I'm not on location on an off day on Donald here. So
Yeah,
They closed off
I've
Donald
joined.
just for you.
Yeah, exactly. All these people are here to watch LFP live. So
and all these
one
people
day.
inside Canada Life Center
Wow.
behind me.
That's why they're waving
So-
towels. They're so excited for LFP Live.
Absolutely. Elliott, how you doing?
I'm good. I mean, it's good as you're going to be after a letdown last night. But, what would it be without the Winnipeg Jets at least stretch run the games where they let you down a little bit. So,
yeah, well, let's get into it. The series is now a best of 5 between the Jets and the Avalanche. It's tied 1-1. The Avs have stolen back home ice advantage, if you will, with a 5-2 win last night, late start. And the Jets jumped out to a 2-1 lead in the second period. The final 5 minutes of the second period, or final 5, 7, 10-ish minutes, however you want to call it. One of the worst stretches of Jets hockey this season, just an absolute collapse in the end of the second. Third period, that's a veteran team shutting things down in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's what they do. What was your guys' takeaway from this game last night? Brian, I'll start with you live from the street party.
I honestly, it feels like the effort's there, but it feels like the effort is also in a way causing a lot of forced plays that aren't working, because it feels like they're all right
work
there.
harder versus work smarter. I feel like I
Exactly.
totally agree with you. Yeah.
Like it feels like, the passing's not, clicking, the transition game's not working. A lot of unnecessary sort of second passes when you don't need to. And it's like a lot. That was the thing too. I thought that they should have shot way more, especially in that second period, where if you kind of just lay it lightly in on Georgiev, he's going to just slowly start feeling a bit more comfortable. You needed to start like just firing from all angles and trying to just get him to move around a little bit, because after that first game, it doesn't seem like it would take much to rattle him at all. So it truly felt though like their heart was in the right place with the effort, but it was like their brains were lagging behind a little bit on a lot of the plays. And that honestly, and it felt like anytime something went wrong, it would be then in the Jet zone for the next 3 minutes. They wouldn't be able to get it out. They would have time to get it out, then they would ring it around the boards or something, and it would be stopped by Makar at the line. Like, it was just a comedy of errors whenever something would go wrong. Because that was the thing, that there was moments where they would break out on transition. They would have odd man rushes, and they'd be like, okay, maybe this is the team that is going to be the one to take a 2-0 lead in the series. And then, as you mentioned, that last like 10 minutes of the second was just an absolute nightmare, and they were never able to recover from that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with in both games. Honestly, the first game, you guys broke it down. I wasn't here, but I said it on the Winnipeg Sports Talk post game show. They looked nervous in the first 10 minutes, and they were working really hard, but they were working really hard to go hit a guy in the corner that had no impact on the play. Right? Like that's yeah, like playoff effort, sure, but you're killing yourself going into the corner for no reason. And I felt that crept in, especially in this game, in the times where they collapsed big time. And that happened at the end of the first. Connor Hellebuyck stood on his head for that 10-minute stretch. 10-minute stretch in the second period, he didn't stand on his head. One of the goals, he mishandled the puck. But I totally agree with your work harder or work smarter, not harder comment. Elliott, what was your initial reaction to game 2?
I'm just going to kind of echo what Brian said. Like, you score first, great sign that they're playing well. And really, you could say this is kind of more like a European football term, but Georgiev grew into the game. Like, as the Jets kind of weren't shooting as much, it was kind of soft stuff.
Awful in the first period.
Oh, I was sitting there watching the game, and I'm like, can we please just pepper him with shots? Because every single save he made in that first period and a little bit to begin the second looked not convincing at all. like you said, Brian, he'd make a glove save, it would pop out of his glove. He'd make a pad save, huge rebound. Like it just, his rebound control wasn't there. It just seemed like he was still very like shaky. And I just wish the Jets had tried to continue to take it to him and just throw stuff on net. And when the Jets actually got chances in that game were when they threw the puck on net. And I'm not talking even about the second goal. I'm just talking about like Monahan hit Toffoli on a cross ice pass. Morrissey had a couple shots from the point that were tipped, and he made saves that Georgiev made saves on that, again, weren't too convincing. He grew with confidence, but I still don't think it's there. I don't get where the Jets went away with that. And just to quickly touch on, before I know everybody's going to have an opinion on the Connor Hellebuyck goal, I just want to put my stamp on it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. It was a simple error that it sucks it happened then, but you knew he had to have a puck handling error at some point this year, and he hadn't yet. So it just sucks it happened in the playoffs. But as much as people hate, I'm not going to quote Steve Dangle. You all know what could be said there. But Connor Hellebuyck has actually shown that he's been really good handling the puck behind his own net without making mistakes and actually bailing the Jets out at times, making plays. And it just sucks that first, it probably won't be the last time we mention his name in a negative way, but as much as that was Connor Hellebuyck's fault, why was Neil Pionk 5 seconds late there on the back check? Like, there was an Abs player. Who was the Abs player? I don't remember who it was.
It was Jakub Trenin.
Jakub Trenin.
Yeah.
Was it all by himself, and Neil Pionk comes storming in like 3 seconds after Trenin's already made the play. Like, where are you? Like, Dylan's already on below the goal line, there already. So
that felt like the real story of, honestly, the first two games where, in terms of getting to loose pucks, the Jets always seem to be late or they don't come out of it. That's like, there's been so many 50-50 pucks that have gone the Avs way. Because whether it's body positioning or timing or something, the Jets aren't doing enough to get there. And that's been honestly one of the biggest differences is, between getting a puck out and allowing, 2 or 3 goals because you're, being tired and, causing, mistakes and everything. So, what you said there about Pionk, it's been a thing for a lot of guys where they're timing their convergence a little bit too late, or they're not skating, in the proper route to get to the puck before the Avs player, or at least to make a better play on it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I do want to talk about Hellebuyck in kind of a grander scheme. I also want to talk about the quick thing on the overpassing. And then I want to put a bow on the initial reaction part of this. But the overpassing thing, there was a 2-on-1 with Monahan and Toffoli in the first period. Jets were up 1-0 at the time. 2-on-1 from like the red line in, and Dylan Sandberg is coming late. So like it's kind of a 3-on-1. And Monahan passes it back to Sandberg, who one-timed it. And like, yeah, it's a chance. It's a nice save. But like you
lower
have Tyler
percentage play.
That was also the second chance that they'd done that. That was the second time that they tried to pass Sandberg trailing in late. And the first one got deflected away.
Bonus talked about it after the game. He said, we could tell these guys to shoot all they want. If they pass, they pass. That's on them, kind of thing. First of all, Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli have to be a lot better. We could talk about the second line. But that's a scenario where those two players have to make that play. You're not passing to your guy who had 1 goal in the regular season, trailing on the 3-on-1. Like Tyler Toffoli is a 30-plus goal scorer. You, Sean Monahan, are playing at a 30-goal pace this season. That's all you need on a 2-on-1. Okay, like that's where my mind was at with that. And in 1-0 at the time, 2-on-1 with those two, that was such a huge opportunity that I feel like they wasted early in the game. To quickly put a bow on the initial reaction part of this, I thought game 1 was the Avs style from start to finish, and somehow the Jets won. Like, it was their style of game. It was run and gun. The Jets, like Hellebuyck joked, he just made 1 more save than the other guy, and somehow the Jets left the series winning 1-0. I felt game 2 was a battle of styles. Like it was actually Jets style versus Avs style, and the Avs style just won on this night. But I didn't think that it was like the Jets imposed their style on the Avs or vice versa, like it was in game 1 with the Avs, but somehow the Jets won that game. Like, hockey's weird sometimes. But I thought for the first 2 periods, up until their collapse late in the second, the Jets were actually playing well, playing their style, playing structured defensively. And then Connor Hellebuyck misplays that puck. Zach Parise scores. Miles Wood scores a weird one off of the face-off. That was before the Hellebuyck one. And then Josh Manson comes out of the box and goes 5-hole with 6 seconds left in the period. That was just a backbreaker. But I thought that it was a style versus style, and the Avs just won. They were just better at playing their style. And it goes back to Brian's thing of working smarter, not harder, in the sense that the Jets' style is to play physical, to grind teams down with their defensive structure. But when you're working super hard to go hit a guy 30 feet away and then leaving a 2-on-1 behind you, that's working hard. That's playing your, but it's going away from your structure, going away from your style. I want to talk about Hellebuyck. Outside of the puck handling gaff, well, I guess that's included because that was kind of his fault. But they scored 6 goals in game 1. The Avs did. They scored 4 goals before the empty netter in this game. Obviously, Connor Hellebuyck's going to start game 3. But where's your guys' kind of leash at with him in terms of the fact he's let up 10 goals through 2 games, Brian?
My leash hasn't really shortened with him because I mentioned at length on the last episode where, aside from the McKinnon goal, I would say almost every single one of those he couldn't see, or it was a weird bounce that goes off of like Brendan Dillon's shoulder in the front.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to discount like 4 to 5 of 6 goals in that first game. Obviously there's the gaff in game 2. And he's always been a little bit iffy on breakaways. Like, it's always been something that one-on-one, it seems like if he doesn't get the first read, he can't really recover to make that. But then we're also seeing other goals where, the traffic's in front of him and, defensive breakdowns that are causing guys to be way more open than they should be. So I'm not like, obviously we need him to, if this is how the Jets are playing and this is what we're going to see from them for the rest of the series, where they just have these moments of just total insanity where they can't do anything with the puck, we need him to be above what he is now. But I'm not about to sit here and say that Connor Hellebuyck allowing what he has so far has been the root cause of, the Jets struggles, because, like, to be honest with you,
Agreed.
Out of the, was it 10 goals that have been scored in the series, I can maybe fault him for 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I'm at on that. And, like, that's the thing. It's Connor Hellebuyck. And aside from his struggles last year, there really isn't too much bearing on the fact that he's not a quote-unquote playoff goalie. We saw that he was incredible in 2017-18. He did his absolute best to keep the, faltering Jets in it in the St. Louis series. And then obviously he kind of, in that, especially in that the COVID bubble, he did his best, but that was like the Derek Forbert just playing 20 minutes a night. And Tucker Poolman, Josh Morrissey pairing era, where it was just, how many shots can he take before he breaks? So it's a little bit disappointing to have, this kind of start after the best defensive structure of, the entire league. But I think it's because you're not seeing that great defensive play in front of them, and you're not getting guys clearing, the front of the net, effectively, because he's just flying blind half the time out there. So the leash is long, and I'm anticipating at least, like regular Connor Hellebuyck stuff, like for the remainder of the series. Like, I can't see him allowing another 6 goals, and especially ones that actually, come by his hand.
Yeah. Elliott, where are you at with Hellebuyck?
Yeah, I'm same with Brian here. I really don't see there to be any need to start panicking that Connor Hellebuyck isn't Connor Hellebuyck. Like, realistically, I think obviously he'd probably want the Josh Manson breakaway goal back, but I think the one he'd really want back is the Miles Wood goal.
That one really annoyed me. I like plays like that where obviously he didn't see it, but it just,
well, he's not ready.
He's not ready. Yeah, but no one's ready. Like
No.
he along with the rest of the Jets were just not ready. And Miles Wood should not be able to just take one stride and whack the puck into the net off of a faceoff. Like that's just
Yeah.
that
I'm pretty sure he was
goal,
standing
Quality of error
still too.
situation.
Yeah.
that goal to tie the game just felt like
was
the Jets to
deflating.
that point were playing great, and it was just like, ugh. But then they had the 4-minute kill on the Scheifele goal, so it didn't deflate them per se, but it just looked bad. The optics of it were horrible, and goals like that are just annoying to see.
Yeah, 100%. And so for me, I don't think that we need to be panicking just yet. We also have to remember that this is Connor Hellebuyck, and at some point in the series, no matter how bad he's playing, especially if you're the Avs, you have to know, okay, this is going to probably stop at some point, because there is going to be a game where he will allow one or like I'm calling it now. I don't really care if I'm wrong. You all flame me later. You can all flame me later. If this series goes 6 or 7 games, there will be at least one game where Connor Hellebuyck allows one or less.
Okay.
I don't mind that, to be honest with
I
you.
like it. I like it.
Given his track record.
Given his track record, given he also really hasn't done it in the last while, like it's been Laurent Brossoit who's been the one that's had the shutout, had the 1 goal allowed games. Connor Hellebuyck really, like, yes, he's been the Vezina Trophy, going to be the Vezina Trophy winning goaltender this year, but he really hasn't had too many, like, oh my God, vintage Connor Hellebuyck, he's made 45 saves and only allowed 1 tonight, and it's because somebody placed a perfect shot. Like, he hasn't had that game. He hasn't had too many of those games. He's normally good for about 4 or 5 of those this year, and I think he's maybe had about 1, maybe 2 of them.
You know when this game's gonna come? Game 4, Mr. Matinee, Connor Hellebuyck on 1:30 p.m. start for Game 4. That's when it's gonna come. He's dynamite in afternoon games, and
but
Game 4 is when it's gonna happen.
There we go.
But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, it's a comedy, like Brian said, it's comedy of errors. It's also just like the remainder of the Jets skaters. He's getting bad bounces. Like the Jets, I would say the only good bounce, the only good bounce the Jets got last night was Gustafson's goal, because it bounced right to his stick, and all he had to do was put it in the net. Every other bounce, the Jets didn't get any other bounces. Yes, they should be winning 50-50 battles and winning their braces to pucks, but hockey's and sports is also about luck. So it's it's crazy for me to sit here and say, yes, it's frustratingly lost, and yes, they probably should have won, but I'm not really as mad as I would be if they got thoroughly like outplayed. Like it was just like a couple unfortunate bounces and events led to the score being, I'm not even going to count the empty netter because it was realistically 4-2.
I think to kind of piggyback off that before we head into our break, the Kyle Connor post when the Jets were up 2-1, that just hit square in the post. He beat Georgiev clean. That goes posting in. The Jets are up 3-1 at that point. I think the game looks a lot different. And the Jets had all the momentum. And I think, I don't know who scored the second goal for Colorado. It's escaping my mind, but it was literally the next shift. Like, Kyle Connor scored, and then the Avs came down, tied it 2-2. Then the Parise goal happened where Hellebuyck had the puck handling gaff. Then it was 4-on-4, and Manson scored to make it 4-2, and that was the game. That was it. Yeah. And in the blink of an eye, the game was over, and the series was tied. To be honest, it was quick strike from the Avalanche. That's what they do. That's their style, transition hockey, and they did it well on Tuesday night. Let's hear a word from DraftKings. And when we come back, I want to talk about the second line. They haven't scored a goal in this series. I talked a little bit about Monahan and Toffoli. Also want to talk about some other individual performances and some keys to victory going forward for the Jets as the series shifts to Denver. Here's a word from DraftKings.
The chase for the Stanley Cup is on, and if you're looking to light the lamp, nothing beats DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. From the start of playoff beards all the way till hoisting the cup, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
And welcome back into episode 87 of the Level Flight podcast. All three of us are here today. My name's Connor. Brian and Elliott are here as well. Let's get into the second line, the top line. I just want to, the top line produced in game one, but their analytics haven't been great in either game with the Jets controlling the matchup. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on the second line, Ehlers, Monahan, Toffoli. I thought Nikolai Ehlers had a good game one. I thought he was skating well. I thought he was holding onto the puck a lot more and producing some chances. He had that backhand to Neil Pionk that he just missed on with a wide open net. I thought he had a great game. Monahan and Toffoli can't really say the same. And then you come into game two and Ehlers' play is worse, in my opinion. And Monahan and Toffoli didn't elevate. And that line was just sort of invisible altogether for me. So I want to get your guys' thoughts, because that was an X factor going into the series, was that line being able to take advantage of the Avalanche's depth. Brian, what are your thoughts on what you've seen out of that second line through two games and what you have to see more of going forward?
Yeah, I mean, for me, especially in game one, it felt like Ehlers was being his dynamic self,
He played
and
great.
Toffoli and Monahan were a step behind,
Mhm.
almost on every play that was sort of developing. And then with all of those chances not going their way, it felt as if game two, Ehlers tried some of the stuff early. Colorado saw it coming, and that was the thing. There was nothing he couldn't do anything through the neutral zone, which is where he thrives.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, it felt like that entire line was just like there. They would come onto the ice, and then the second that Ehlers, Monahan, Toffoli start dumping the puck in, means that line is not going to be successful. That the only way that that line is successful is they carry it over the line because they create space for each other. And with all three of them sort of just becoming, a little bit behind on the play, doing the little dump and chase when that's really not their game, they're not going to be effective. And as you said, that's an X factor of the series, because because production wise, the only real production we've got has been from Adam Lowry, the fourth line, and then honestly, the top line has produced as much as you would hope them to.
Yeah.
And I just want to quickly touch on that. Obviously, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. Obviously, the underlying numbers have not been, the best for that top line, and they kind of got a lot of guys got shelled last night, especially because of that second period. I want to talk about effort here, because I honestly can't recall a point where I saw Kyle Connor working as hard as he has in the first two games of the series.
He's
He
been the
looks
Jets' best
better.
player.
He has. And
Yeah,
like,
flat out.
honestly, Connor and Scheifele, and if you could go back and clip everything, you could put together a full episode of us critiquing those two together. Connor and Scheifele, their efforts for the first two games cannot be faulted. They're obviously still allowing the shots, but they're putting the effort in. And I think the issue is they're just getting, beaten to those 50-50 pucks. They're, being like, if they're paired with that second defensive pairing, it's typically going to be, it's a neutral zone turnover that they end up giving up a chance on, but it's not because they turned it over. And I honestly, for once, I don't like the, obviously the underlying is not very favorable towards them, but for the first time this season, my eye test of them, actually dictates, their effort is not, correlating with what's actually being produced, because I'm seeing it and I, appreciate it greatly. But if their chances aren't, going to be going in all the time, and they're still allowing some stuff, and that second line isn't doing anything, you can't rely on David Gustafsson and Vlad Nemesnikov and Adam Lowry to make up your offensive game. Like, you need the balanced attack for this to work, and you got it in game one, from 3 out of 4 lines, but you didn't get any of it really from aside from that top line in the second game, and then you got the Gus goal, but second line not there. Third line
Yeah.
can't expect it to be this offensive force every game, especially when they're going to be against Nate McKinnon. Yeah, it's frustrating though to see that the effort from the top line is finally there, but the second line can't pick up the slack.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I Kyle Connor has been the Jets' best player, along with Adam Lowry. Vladislav Nemestikov has been great. Josh Morrissey's obviously been really good as well. He always is, but Kyle Connor is the guy who's elevated his game the most for me in this series so far. And look, I was seeing a line matchup thing where Lowry is against McKinnon. They're hard matching that line, of course. Scheifele's line is against the Avs' second line of Middlestat as much as possible. And the second line of Monahan, Ehlers, and Toffoli is getting the rest. And they're having some lines or some shifts against Middlestat. They're having some shifts against McKinnon, but the bulk of their shifts are coming against the Avs bottom six. And they haven't scored a goal in 2 games. Like that, they're not going to win with that. I wrote a takeaways piece from last night's game, basically saying the Jets can't have the second best goaltender in this series, which on Tuesday night, Connor Hellebuyck was the second best goaltender. And the Jets can't have the second best forward depth in this series because that's supposed to be the 2 biggest advantages that they had coming into the series. And if you don't have that, the Avs high-end talent is going to kill you game after game. So the second line has to be a lot better going forward. Elliott, what have you seen? I guess this is just kind of an entire forward core discussion now, but specifically that second line who hasn't scored in both games.
I realistically think that second line has generated some chances. Like they've been close a couple of times, and that's not to excuse, obviously, like what I'm trying to say is they've had flashes of good play, especially Monahan, Toffoli. They've connected on a couple passes sometimes for some dangerous chances right in front. Haven't converted, but that also doesn't excuse them for being really bad in the defensive zone. Like they've gotten cycled. They've been like you can point to so many different situations where they go out there, they maybe get a chance the other way, and then they come back in transition. The Avs beat them to their own zone, and like Toffoli and or Monahan is behind the play, and Ehlers is the third forward trying to like break up a 3-on-2 rush the other way. And the Avs stop up, and then they cycle that second line. Like I think the issue is you have 2 guys with slower than average foot speeds with one guy who is an above average foot speed guy. And then you're putting them against a line of the Avs who have really good skaters up and down. They may not be the best quote unquote players, but the Avs have guys who skate well up and down their lineup. So I think that's kind of where the issue is they get caught deep, and then they're trying to come back. And by the time that Monahan and Toffoli are back, they're tired, they're fatigued, and then they just get cycled, and then they can't get the puck out. And then that's where it's killing the Jets, because then either they get it out finally, and then whoever's coming over the boards, it's normally the Lowry line, and then they got to play tired in the defensive zone against the McKinnon line, because this was also a theme, and I think it's going to be a theme going forward because it worked for Jared Bednar, was playing McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar,
every single offensive zone. Yeah, every single offensive zone shift, every single time the Jets' fourth line was out there at all, Nathan McKinnon was coming over the boards. Like in the press box, we were saying like it felt like McKinnon played the whole game. Like,
well, he played the entire 4-minute power play, the entire double minor. He did not come off the ice,
and that's what you're gonna have to deal with. Like it's plain and simple. That's why the depth. Like Nathan McKinnon can play the whole game. He had 1 assist last night, and the Avs won 5-2. Like I thought they actually did a pretty good job against Nathan McKinnon last night. But you know what's losing them the series right now is the depth.
Yeah.
Which was supposed to be the biggest advantage they had coming in. It's like Yakov Trenin and Zach Parise are combining to give them the lead. And then Josh Manson is coming out of the box and scoring a goal. And Miles Wood is scoring a goal. Like
he has 2.
He has 2. The Avs depth is showing up and the Jets is not. And that has to change going forward. There was one other thing you said. Oh yeah, exiting the zone. You brought it up there. I think that's been the number one problem for the Jets in this series. We talked a lot about goaltending. We talked a lot about they're not working smarter, like Brian said, and they're going to make hits and play playoff tough hockey, but putting themselves out of position and stuff like that. I think exiting the zone and just chipping it off the glass right to the defenseman. I think Brian brought this up earlier in the episode as well. Chipping it, and then Makar will just stop it right at the blue line, and it's like, all right, you got to play defense for another 30 seconds now because you didn't exit the zone. So more controlled exits, more controlled entries through the neutral zone, I think, is my biggest key going forward in this series, along with Connor Hellebuyck kind of returning to the numbers that we're used to. The depth needs to show up, and the exits and entries need to be there. What's your guys' biggest keys as the series shifts to Denver? And obviously the Jets will be looking to come back here in Winnipeg in Game 5 with at least a split. Brian, what's your biggest key?
I honestly think the biggest key is seeing how the Jets, and more specifically Rick Bowness, mitigates the fact that they no longer control the line matchups.
Is that a good thing?
Part of me is actually wondering that, because
I don't know, man.
Especially if I'm thinking for like the second line, where if they can, be out there against someone who's not, as fast as that, that third line, can they maybe, like, if they're out there against the middle stat line, maybe they succeed. There's a lot of unknowns. I still think that Bonus tries to get Lowry out as much as he can against McKinnon, as much as he can in his power. But ultimately it's going to be on the guys who are out there when suddenly Nate comes out when you're in there for an offensive zone faceoff to, figure it out. And I think that's got to be the message: is I don't care who's out there, play hard on him to make sure he's not creating that. But it's also the fact that you have now different looks that maybe it works better for you. Maybe the Scheifele line, can capitalize against, different, dynamic offensive players. Maybe that second line finally gets going, because if you recall correctly, in that 7-0 win, it was the second line was really clicking against specific guys on the Avs. So I think for me, it's how does the line matching affect how the Jets play going forward? Because if they can, handle it well and it actually benefits them, I'd be very happy with coming back with at least another win.
Yeah. Elliott, what's your biggest key over these next two games, Friday and Sunday, before the Jets return home?
Realistically, it's just taking care of the puck, and we need to see something from the second line. Like, the second line has to do something. I'm not really worried as much about Connor Hellebuyck or him. Like, I know he is going to have at least a game or turn around his series with a game where he steals one for the Jets that they probably shouldn't win. But it's taking care of the puck, and it's when you have an opportunity to clear it, you need to clear it. We talked about bounces. Sandberg had one where he went to go clear the puck, and it went off of, I can't remember if it was Makar pinching or somebody came in out of nowhere, and all they did was get like the back end of their skate on the puck, and it kept the puck in. Like, he had an open clear on the backhand, and he chose to try to get it off of the glass on the forehand instead of trying to make the play on the backhand, and it unfortunately went off a skate and stayed in the zone. I don't believe the Avs scored, but it was another opportunity where the Avs got to stay in the zone, cycle, make a play against tired defenders. So I think just taking care of the puck in general is the biggest thing, because I think if they clean that up, I think the Jets are just fine in this series. They've, for the most part, they've kept McKinnon quiet. They've rattled Georgiev. So far, they've kept him quiet. They've done their job. They've kept him to a minimum. They've done their best in terms of the first line producing, and most of the other lines chipping in. They just need to stay calm and take care of the puck. I think there's so much pressure on them right now, and especially now that they've now lost another game in the playoffs. I think I think you might get a little more desperation. Like, I think the pressure thing was really evident in the first 10 minutes of game one. Like, holy moly, I've never seen them that nervous than they were in the first 10 minutes. Like, they
didn't know how to play with the puck, and they were just they were hitting every single player in sight and just playing just so energized. Like they had so much energy and they just like burnt out and somehow still won the game. But I think now that they've lost a game, you got 2 days here in between games before you play Friday.
Focus
I think
up.
you're going to see a team that knows that they need to win a game on the road. They're going to be a little more desperate. And you're going to hopefully see a little bit more, like we said, from that second line, maybe a little more calm with pucks, not just throwing everything off the glass and not out, like glass
Yeah.
and it stays in at the point, like that's happened how many times in this series. But for me, you guys mentioned the other 2 points. I'm going to say Connor Hellebuyck. The Jets have to have the better goalie in this series, and
Mhm.
he hasn't been the better goalie. Alexander Georgiev had an abysmal game 1, but he outplayed him in game 2, and the series is tied. So going forward, it's a best of 5, and Connor Hellebuyck has to be better than Alexander Georgiev by a wide margin, or else the Jets can book tea times next week, and that'll be what happens if Hellebuyck doesn't step up. So coming back just under a week from today, next Tuesday, it'll be game 5 here in Winnipeg. Hopefully the Jets will be coming back with at least a split. And that's not an elimination game. But before that, we will be going live Sunday morning for LFP Live episode 11. We're super pumped for this. It's another pregame edition. This time it's even earlier. The game starts at 1:30 that day. So it'll be a nice primer right into the pregame starting at 1:30 that day. Enjoy the game Friday night, 9 p.m. Central. That'll be another late one, but at least it's on the road. So there's no like traveling to and from the game unless you're going to Colorado. But no, enjoy the game. We will see you Sunday morning with a breakdown of game 3 and a preview of game 4 from Brian, Elliott, and I. Thank you for listening to episode 87 of the Level Flight Podcast. We'll see you Sunday morning. Enjoy the games, everyone, and have a great couple days. See ya.